Commissioners. My name is Dadey, I'm the Executive Director of Citizens Union. And earlier today, Citizens Union issued a report that looked at voter turnout in special elections or city council elections versus those for state legislative races. And we found that the average turnout for nonpartisan special elections for city council seats over the past 10 years has been 10.3%, which is 57% greater than those for the state legislative race. Actually, the turnout gap over the last 2 years increases between these two. Since 2008, there have been 10 special elections, 5 of which were nonpartisan and 5 which were partisan. And then the average nonpartisan special election turnout actually was 12% for city council seats, which is 109% higher than the turnout of 5.76%. I believe that this shows that when voters are given a choice and their vote matters, they will turn out in greater numbers than they do when the outcome is a foregone conclusion. Much of the discussion over the last couple of months, particularly the last couple of weeks, is does nonpartisan elections affect turnout? I believe the information that we're providing you with here today does in fact make that case rather convincingly. And I have copies of the report and copies of the news release that we have issued to the press. Let me just also address some of these other issues that are being raised about the toxic effect that a top 2 or nonpartisan system may have on other ballot issues. It's very possible that that could happen, and that's why Citizens Union put forward a very comprehensive report on 50 recommendations to show how, that it would not just be about term limits, it would not be just about nonpartisan elections, but it would be rather about ways in which to open up government decision-making and elections to all New Yorkers, so that it just wouldn't be seen as 1 or 2 issues, but rather a range of issues. And with that in mind, I encourage you not to walk away from and continue to think about embracing things like independent budgeting, reforming city council compensation and LULUs, reforming our member item process, taking on the nettlesome issue, but the important issue of fair share. And also not to forget that in terms of timing, the city council lines will be redrawn in 2012. We need to reform the process by which those lines are drawn and create an even more independent redistricting commission, and only your commission can do that. I would also urge you to address an issue that came up in 2007 when we reformed the city's lobbying laws and kept the enforcement and oversight responsibility with the city clerk, which is a conflict of interest for the city council to continue to have that appointment problem. You need to address that. That's an unanswered question. And just briefly on the issue of IRV, which we heard about last week in Queens, not IRV, but the issue of how nonpartisan or top 2 would affect negatively the issue of third parties. I just want to point out that no third party candidate has ever won election in a city council, in a city election. There was one. It was a special election. Tish James won in a special election after the death of Councilmember Davis. Actually, by going to a top 2 system and giving greater choice at the beginning, you will allow third-party candidates a far greater chance of getting into that next round than you do right now when they have to compete against the Democratic or the Republican candidate. And the only way they are able to leverage their influence is not by running a candidate on their own and hoping that candidate's going to win, but by aligning themselves with candidates already endorsed by the Republican or Democratic Party. So I think that's a red herring that was put out there last week that needs to be addressed. So I would just urge you to, as we said in our report a couple weeks ago, in order to inoculate yourself against this issue of term limits and or nonpartisan top 2, to reach a little higher, to aim further, and take on some of these issues that have been out there in the public discourse for quite some time and are crying out for a solution and the mayor can't do this on his own, nor can the city council. The only people that can take on these issues are the people sitting at that table.
Thank you, Mr. Dadey.